Hello, folks, and welcome to Transformed by Birth, a podcast about the rite of passage of pregnancy, birth, and new parenthood. I'm your host, Britta Bushnell, author, mythologist, childbirth educator, and all around deep diver with a side of goofball. I'm so glad you're here. Today's episode is about the often uncomfortable bedfellows of work and parenthood. So grab your comfy beverage of choice. Mine is a decaf black tea today, or take us along for a walk as we dive deep with maternal rights at work lawyer Daphne Delvaux. Before we begin, we start the way we always do by lighting a candle. If you want to join me, please do, or just take a breath as I light mine. I light today's candle, acknowledging the often messy process of merging our identities of parent and professional. There's this moment that often happens after you have a baby. You're looking at this little person you've created, and suddenly everything you thought mattered before feels different. Your priorities don't just shift, they get completely reordered in a way that feels both somehow natural and absolutely earth-shattering at the same time. And here's what's both heartbreaking and maddening. Our work culture often expects you to act like this profound transformation never happened. Like your baby's needs should somehow always take a back seat to business needs. Like you should be grateful for the bare minimum rather than advocating for what you and your baby actually need to thrive. What if we've got this completely backwards? What if becoming a parent isn't something to hide or minimize, but actually gives us superpowers that make us better at what we do? And what if navigating this work life, parent life threshold was embraced as part of the larger rite of passage of becoming a parent? Well, today's guest first became known to me through her Instagram handle, the Mom Attorney, back in 2021. Right away, I knew our work aligned. And when I decided to launch this podcast, she was one of the first people I wanted to talk to. Daphne is an employment lawyer who founded the nation's first law firm devoted exclusively to mothers' rights at work. She's also the creator of the Mom Attorney, a platform on a mission to educate mothers on their rights at work and teach them how to advocate for their needs, including extended maternity leaves, financial benefits, telework, flexibility, more breaks, pumping protections, and more, all without sacrificing their career goals. Key part. Daphne calls herself a love warrior who's on a mission protecting what she calls the mother-baby bundle. And something I just learned today, Daphne just finished writing a book to be published by HarperCollins in February 2026. Daphne, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to finally get to talk with you live rather than through Instagram messages.
I know. I'm so excited too. Thank you so much for having me here. I
So
chat with.
it's super great to have you. So you and I were just talking about right before we hit record about this transformation and about the rite of passage of becoming a parent and how one of the big initiations for many parents is that moment heading back to work. That it's a hard one. Can you talk to me about what you have seen around this threshold that is your specialty? What are
Mm.
parents facing? What's happening for them beyond simply navigating it with their work, although that is a part of it? What is happening for them?
Mm. Ooh, such a good, juicy question. So there's a few things that are happening for them, mainly that there is this tension between their work life and their family life, where they feel like there are so many needs all around and they don't really know where to go and how to orient themselves. In addition, their bodies are also wanting to be home with the baby or expressing breast milk, but they're using a pump. So there's suddenly this kind of separation between their work life and their family life, which can be extremely uncomfortable and often premature. And at the same time, workplaces can be quite sterile and can be, um, you know, devoid of language related to our body's functions, including lactation and breastfeeding and healing and anxiety and depression and everything related to our baby. So we may feel the need to kind of suppress our motherhood in the workplace or our parenting experience in the workplace and just kind of pretend like nothing happened, as if that baby isn't just as demanding as during the newborn days. And it's in that place where I meet parents in this tension of, I feel like I can't be honest. I don't know how to express my needs. I feel like I'm scared to rock the boat. Maybe I've asked for too much. I need my job because also now we're providing, right? Both mothers and fathers. Suddenly it's not just our own ambitions or paying our own cell phone bill, but we have to actually provide. And often what it means is actually paying to work in a sense that we're paying for childcare. So here we are actually investing in this job financially so that we can be paid. So there's this whole recalculation that needs to happen as to, is this even worth it? Does this even make sense for me? And then there's also the harsh reality of being thrown back into the world of time and attendance policies and timesheets and um, projects that are due yesterday and coming back to a whole pile of work and maybe resentful coworkers, just this rushed, urgent energy that when we were with our baby, we left the world of time. Everything is such a blur. Everything kind of bleeds together when we're with our baby. And suddenly we're in this really abrupt world of time. And it can feel violent to the system to kind of move back into that at the beginning. And then through that, because this is really challenging, and this is where most mothers call me and just say, I can't do this. Like, this is impossible. And it's almost a little bit like during birth, during transition, when women say, I can't do this when they're giving birth, and then they're doing it, right? Like, there's some
Mhm.
they're doing it even though while they're saying I can't do it. So that's what I see in my work too, is parents saying I can't do it, but they're actually doing it. They just need a couple of tools and some resources and also the confidence to make sure that they can get their needs met at work. Parenting from the moment we're pregnant is advocacy, and it is a muscle. It is a skill that we can learn. And it is so different to do it on behalf of your children because suddenly, kind of, that primal protective energy comes out. And in the before we have kids, often we can kind of ignore our own uh, limitations or kind of, work late or show up early. And suddenly we can't do that anymore. We have to leave at 5 or a certain time. We can't stay for the late meeting. We can't go to happy hour. And it can suddenly feel like there's guilt on both ends, both mom guilt, but also work guilt, feeling like we can't keep up at work either. So there's just a lot to delve into during this really tender time, which I do believe to be an initiation, because when I see women and parents come out of this time, they are these advocacy ninjas. Like, they know exactly how to communicate their needs without being antagonistic in a way where they can actually position themselves as experts on some of these compliance issues, and by that, and then by extension, actually help their employers. Or they can be a bridge to a whole new demographic of clients. And motherhood and parenting is a superpower. And it is something that primes us to be the best, most expansive version of ourselves. And that is the version that we are giving to our employers. Um, so these are just some of the things that I'm seeing when it comes to returning to work.
Wow. I mean, I just wrote down a whole bunch of notes because there were so many pieces as you were speaking that were triggering thoughts for me. And I'm gonna pull a couple of threads if I can, which is one, the first one I wrote down that felt so alive and the way you spoke about it so powerful is time.
Time.
Time as a there's such different qualities of time. And the time is the clock is such a symbol and tool of the Apollonian overculture. I talk archetypally, I know you know this about
I love it.
the
I'm so
archetypes
thrilled in that.
that are at play during this time, being the twins, Apollo and Artemis. Apollo really representing that uh, cultured. His tools are things like the lyre, and he's a poet, and he's about like elevated culture and order and structure and brightly lit. He's a sun god, whereas Artemis, his twin, is at home in the wilderness and is untamed and is a moon goddess, so has more of a connection to time that is cyclical rather than direct like the sun time. And when you spoke about time, it made me think of these twins because that pregnancy, birth, postpartum period, time is so artemisian. It's
Mhm,
so uncontrolled and wild and untamed and more connected to cyclical types of time than the time that it's on a clock. And yet, when we go back into the workforce, it's very much clock time. And you used the term that being violent. And that
mhm,
was really striking to me that it can feel violent to the body, right?
mhm,
That Artemisian time is so embodied. And then we're
mhm,
like, okay, here's the time you have to be here, the time, And then you also spoke about how we've really, in many ways, been programmed through our lives to override the messages that our body, our animal body is telling us so that we can work late, so we can go to this thing or that thing. And when we are parenting, there's it's harder to override our body because it's not just our body that's paying the price.
right.
And suddenly our baby is a mirror for what
Mhm,
it is that's happening. And so to me that feels like that connects that violent piece in a
mhm.
really oof, like
Yeah.
dagger. I could feel it as you spoke about it.
Yeah, we can all feel it because there's a separation that occurs, there's a rupture, and we have to be honest about that. And even though it is quote unquote normal in a sense that I guess we all do it. That's kind of how culturally how it's treated. It doesn't mean that it's not violent. It doesn't mean that it
Mm.
isn't a great cultural wound and to some extent a trauma that all of us are moving through together. And truly my role is to do everything in my power to make that transition not traumatic and to
Mhm.
make that transition smooth and seamless and easeful and restful, even joyful, even celebratory, and even playful, if that's
Mhm.
possible. That's what I've seen. And the way that I do that is by extending Artemisian time, essentially, by extending the Artemisian way of relating to our own bodies and babies, kind of in stretching that out as far as we can. Because where the violence and the rupture occurs is when there is this kind of abrupt shift instead of a shift, a transition, a transformation that can be more held and contained. So much of my work is kind of in like speaking in Apollonial language, but for Artemis, for the feminine, for the mother, for the wild, for the baby. But of course, we can't speak that language in a workplace setting. So I'm, in a sense, this translator where I teach you the language that is appropriate in that setting and professional and also accepted. Often
Mhm.
that means that we're using specific regulations or we're using even medical language to describe what are just really purely physiological processes. But this is some of the language that is accepted in the work setting so that when the mother feels like I'm overwhelmed, my baby's not taking the bottle, my breasts are leaking. The moment I even go to the store, I can't get away. I can't imagine going back to work, but I need my job. I can't quit in this tension of like, there is no good solution. I give her the language to come up with some options that are right in front of her. And so, what is so important about my work is that I am not looking at this. illusory, visionary time in the future where we all magically get along. I mean, I'm absolutely moving towards that and
Yes.
advocating for
Can we
that.
all hope for that and
Yeah,
advocate for
but we're
that? And
not
let's not
there.
skip over that too fast because I think we all need to hold on to
We do.
that vision
The vision.
and continue to advocate for today.
Right, because it's in this gap that we can feel grief of like, it should be so much easier. We should have the village. We should be understood. We should be respected. And that's where we can start to feel hopeless because we see what's possible and we're not there and we don't know how or when we'll get there. So it's like we hold a vision, but we also look at today. What are some of the tools available today, resources that you can actually use right now, an email that you can send that will help you in this moment to stay with your baby, to get more time off, to get more, to be excused from this very draconian clock. Because truly, what the workplace relationship is like, it is time in exchange for money. That is the basic agreement and tenet of capitalism. And then motherhood and parenthood comes in and drops a bomb. And motherhood is in total contradiction with the basic tenets of capitalism because it says, actually, um, we want to be home, or actually, we can do the work in less time. Actually, we don't want to sit in traffic for an hour and then see our baby for 1 hour in the evening. That makes no sense. Or actually, we don't want to return to work because we've just done our job from home. Time is so much more stretched within the Artemisian dimension and that doesn't mean we're not as good at our jobs. And that's also where a lot of the frustration lies because it feels good to be trusted with your work as opposed to like you need to be here 9 to 5 because that's
Mhm.
just the norm. And all mothers rebel against that norm,
Right.
which it's natural because it's not uh, conducive to the motherhood experience.
Yeah.
So what I help them with is stretching Artemisian time. I've never expressed it in this way, but this is really like what it is, giving them the email templates, like how do you ask for flex work, remote work, more time off, in a way that you don't lose your job or your benefits or all the protections that you truly need also to support your family.
Yeah. I love that as a translator from the Artemisian realm into the Apollonian realm to help folks get what it is that will support them and their dyad, or if they have
Right.
multiples, triads or
Mhm.
beyond, um, and not lose their job. Because I do think that piece is part of there's the frustration of the place of I can get this all done. Like I'm getting it done. I
Mhm.
mean, what's this the saying? You want something to get done, give it to a busy
That's the
mom.
mom. Yeah.
Give it
So
to a
true.
busy mom. It's like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh. I mean, and it can also feel, especially early on, daunting for a new
Mm.
parent
Yes.
to feel like they're still healing their body, learning how to be a parent, going through their own psychological identity transformation, and now doing that at work. So I love that you're trying to stretch that time because that abruptness is part of what is so challenging. But it's not just the frustration about not being seen well, it's also the fear of
Mhm.
of what is it called? Like the motherhood tax or the what is it?
Yeah, the motherhood tax
Yeah.
of being mommy tracked.
Yes. Right.
Yeah. That
Where then
happens.
it can feel and be that they actually lose some of their upward trajectory in their field.
Truly.
And that can be a place where there's also a lot of fear.
Right. And this is why I'm very busy because this absolutely happens. You know, we don't want to minimize that women
Right.
can lose their professional advancement. And also, when we are prepared and informed on our rights and what the law actually says, that shouldn't happen. And it is really important when we are advocating for ourselves that the fear is going to be right there. You know, there is a real fear there of repercussions, of rocking the boat. And that fear is connected to your livelihood and survival. So it is very deep. It is very root chakra, like I don't want to override that. I just want to
Right.
welcome that fully into the space. And every mother is going to have to make their own assessment and kind of balance as to how far she can push it. And this is going to also depend on privilege and how much access to resources that she has. Um, and just a few things I want to share in relation to this advocacy. It can sometimes backfire when we're not transparent. So let's say we're struggling at work, we're struggling when we come back, but we kind of like bite our tongue and just kind of suffer through it. But people notice, they notice that a few things aren't, you know, up to the same level or standard as it used to be. It is actually worse to try to push through that and say nothing than to be honest and say, I need support. I am a postpartum mother. I understand I have accommodation rights. I need some support with that. Because at least then we're in a legally protected bubble. And if something does happen, that is retaliation. It's illegal and that's actionable. So there's something that we can do about that. But so often what happens is that mothers end up out of a job because they didn't say something, their work suffers, and then they get put on a performance improvement plan, and then they're out of the door, and they really regret that they didn't at least try to advocate for themselves. But it's absolutely true that there can be this like, who am I, right? Like, who all of this work I put in, I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose all of the reputation and the legitimacy and the professional connections that I've built up. And the more that we can be transparent and honest, the more that we also create trust with our employers. Often, what I also see is that they want to help the mothers, but they don't know how. They see that there's something and they want to help because they also want to be compliant. You'd be surprised that employers are more scared of mothers than mothers are scared of their employers. Because I see this from both sides.
Wow.
We tend to be so nervous and have this trepidation as mothers in the workplace of like, oh no, like we're so worried because we're going to get kicked out. But it's also the employers are really scared because they don't want to deal with a lawyer like me. There's these really strong protections and rights that we have as mothers if we really choose to flex that muscle. So they can be sometimes even over accommodating because they want to make sure that you feel fully protected and secured, and there's kind of no risk for them for there to be any tension. And so every workplace is different, of course, but just do not assume that your advocacy is going to result in job loss.
Mhm.
Often it is actually the inverse that's true, that they might really respect that you say what you need. And with men, we call this assertiveness. When a man returns from having a baby, he asks for more money because he has a family to support. That's what he does. But we as women, we are so worried because of course we have the physical experience, or the birthing parents, they have the physical experience. So we feel like we're asking for too much, right? And we also have a family to support. We also have a body to support. And what I also like to remind those who are birthing and mothers is that the manager you're asking also comes from a mother. You'd be surprised like how many managers have soft spots because they really love their own mother. Like there is a love for mothers, not in every workplace, not with every manager. But what we don't want to do is make assumptions about and telling stories to ourselves about what might happen because truly we don't know. And a boat is meant to be rocked. Otherwise, you're on a bad boat. If your boat can't withstand a little storm, then I'd get on another boat. And it's probably good to know that. It's probably good to know whether the place where you're devoting almost all of your time and attention to is in reciprocity with you.
I love that. And you're reminding me of another point that I wrote down here from what you were saying a few minutes ago about the role of advocacy in the life of a parent.
Mhm.
That there is this aspect, the fear walking side by side, the desire to get needs met is a common piece throughout our lives as advocates. And we could say that one of the hats that we wear as a parent is as advocate for our child. And we wear that hat until we pass it on to our child, till our child learns how to advocate for themselves. And guess how they learn how to do that? By watching you, right? And so
Mhm.
there is this piece of acknowledging, like, just as I would with my now adult children, if, or when they were, more like teens, if they would be like, well, I don't want to ask for that with my teacher because it feels
Mm.
uncomfortable, or I'm worried that they'll say XYZ or they'll retaliate, that we get to walk through that gate first in these moments with employers on our own behalf, that we can then be able to better speak to it when our children are facing those moments with people in power, because that's what we're talking about. When we're in a situation of advocacy, we're talking about um, doing something to help ourselves or loved ones who are in a position of authority over us in some way, whether
Mhm.
that's in the labor room, uh, with medical providers or a medical team, and advocating for our rights. It's not saying that our rights don't matter. Our rights clearly matter. And
Mhm.
that still often means we have to be the one reminding the people in power that we have rights.
Right. Exactly. And what I try to teach is to do this in a way that is constructive, not destructive. Because that's another fear of, uh, like I'm going to be seen as a difficult one, or, the one that's mm, using this legal language. And there's a way to do it that's very professional and very collaborative, where you position yourself as helping your employer.
Oh, can
Basically,
you give us an example?
all of us. So, for example, instead of saying, I'm entitled to my rights under the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act, I know you have to accommodate me. Instead, we can say, can we have a meeting? I just learned about this new law. I want to make sure the company's in compliance. I'm really concerned about any risks. As someone who's currently experiencing this, it would be really interesting for me to lead any policy related to how we can support parents to avoid them leaving or avoid any issues with retention. And you can bring in some data about how it's a lot uh, cheaper to support your parent employees than to lose them and then having to hire someone else. Like, all the data is there. So employers love a good spreadsheet, and they love it when you take the lead, because then you are suddenly creating policy and you are really intricating yourself into this organization as a leader. And that is actually really good for their goodwill. Like, it is really good for them, for their appeal as a company, to say, we have these leaders, they're leading mothers, they're leading women, we have a task force or a committee. Like, you'd be surprised like how well received it could be if you position yourself as someone that's there to help everyone, as opposed to being in a conflict, like positioning yourself in conflict to your employer. But I mean, it's true that advocacy is a lifelong skill from the moment we're pregnant, or even before, when if we need IVF, where we're thinking about pregnancy, with our providers, with insurance companies. Um, and it is a skill that we also have to teach our children, because it is also conditioned in us that it's better to just keep your head down and be quiet. And it takes uh you yeah, advocacy is something that after a while will become really natural. um, and especially when you learn how to be really strategic. Um, and that feels really good, because it means that everywhere you go, you're true to yourself and you're true to your own needs. And that is something that is also a beautiful form of a generational gift to pass on to your children. And this is why in my work, my favorite way to work with moms is actually empower them to be their own best advocate, because the best lawyer for your baby is going to be you. It's not going to be me, because that is your baby. So what I love to do is teach you everything I know, but you are actually the one advocating for yourself. And that's something I do inside of my a membership program. But so many women, when they leave my services, they say this is something that I'll be able to use for the rest of my life. And that always gives me such satisfaction to hear that because it's so true too. And I also want to share that I am not like, those kids that are naturally argumentative. I have one of them. I was actually not one of them. I was very shy and timid. I wasn't one of those like naturally assertive lawyers. It is very much a skill I learned as a woman who's very soft and very sensitive and very tender. Like it
Mm.
was quite an unnatural job for me to be a trial lawyer amidst all of these gorillas
Mm.
um, that have such thick skin. I never quite developed thick skin, or often I would work and go and argue for my clients, but on my way home I would cry. And I just want to validate that it's very natural for this to be hard, that it's
Yeah.
okay to move through the emotionality of like, I'm doing this really scary thing. I just sent an email and now I'm just like pacing back and forth and I don't know what's going to happen. Like that is very natural because we're pushing through a lot of fear. And also
Yeah.
sometimes it can be helpful to just have the information and not take action right now, but at least know that the law has your back. That can be really comforting to know, to have this just in your back pocket.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. The information in your back pocket, and also the idea that it might be hard and likely will be hard. And that is, in some ways, one of the indicators that this itself is an initiation.
Mhm.
Because initiations aren't initiations if you just get to go, "Hi, thanks so much. This is great." You don't
Mhm.
get changed by that. You
Mhm.
don't get
Yes.
changed by the easy.
Yeah.
You get changed moving through what is tough. Now, do I wish it weren't so tough? Hell yes. I wish it weren't
Mhm.
so tough. And going through that is part of what can help us get to know ourselves in new ways
Mhm.
and know new aspects of ourselves that likely will benefit us by being awakened to those parts of ourselves in our journey as parents, as professionals, throughout our whole lives as people. There, we've
Right.
got three P's: as parents, professionals, and people. It's like
Mhm.
we need those skills. They're
Mhm.
part of, and if this is one of the initiations that the current culture provides for us, okay, let's get in there and
Let's embrace it.
let's do what we need to do to be
I love it.
transformed by it. Yeah.
I love it. And what I'm sensing in this transformation is that there is, as in every initiation, there is a dissolution that needs to happen. There is
Mm.
the dissolution of the good girl archetype, the one that was just cool with everything and tidy and timely and nice and just happy to take on any project, even though she was so exhausted and she canceled family gatherings to pick on extra work and doing organizing the office parties and taking on all this admin work, um, or just laughing off uh, jokes that are racist or sexist. Like there is this good girl archetype that needs to be dissolved before we can be reborn into capital M mother or P parent, where we have edges, we have a boundary, we're not so porous and we're not so malleable. We're more sturdy and grounded and rooted, and we are really in our bodies, and we speak not just from our minds, but from our wombs. And our wombs have a very strong, deep voice. It's a lot less like, oh, and I know. It's like deep and it's true and it's real. And that is such a powerful place to speak from. And so, what I feel in this initiation and transformation for turning to work is that there is this Instapot pressure cooker where you feel soupy because you have your baby, you have your work. There's so many needs all around you. You feel like your own needs have become irrelevant, and you're just running and running, and then the breath will come of like, okay. And then there's more spaciousness and a little bit more spaciousness. And a lot of mothers want to quit at this time, which I understand. I often counsel them to wait a little and just let the waves come. Let the waves come. Because often it's a little bit like you feel everything. You
Yeah,
sometimes you
they're
can
the
feel happy to be
contractions.
there. Yeah, it's
They're the
contraction.
contractions of
Exactly.
change.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
And you might be
as
happy to be there,
yeah,
see your colleagues, have some time to yourself, feel some individuation and differentiation from your family. You can feel really purposeful in your work because you're contributing to the collective and the greater good for the next generation, which includes your and all children. So there, all of that can coexist in this soup. So it's so true. It's contraction and expansion, contraction and expansion. And there's going to be a moment where you feel like, I can't do this. And just like in birth, we got to breathe through that.
yeah. We got to
Um,
breathe through that, and we may
yeah.
need to moan and howl.
Yes.
We may need to moan and howl. I mean, it doesn't mean that if you're in this growth phase and you're in a contraction, expansion, contraction, expansion process, that there aren't those moments like you spoke about in the car on the way home from being a trial lawyer where you cry.
Yeah.
Like, we're
Right.
not speaking about this change and adaptation and expansion in our psyches and identities, meaning that we aren't going to still lose it.
Right. And it's so welcome.
Right.
It's
Losing
encouraged.
it matters. Losing
It's
it actually
encouraged.
can be good, because
Yes.
that the womb voice that you spoke of
Yeah.
has moans. The womb voice has howls and
Yeah.
cries and whinnies, and it is that voice of the wild.
hmm
And
Yeah.
it still wants to be heard.
And everything we lose, we gain double
Mm,
after the loss. But the loss needs to happen. There needs to be a shedding, just like in birth. Like, and it is messy and it is uncomfortable. And it's going to require maybe some tough decisions. Sometimes this happens in birth too, right? Like, I need to change something, I need to make a pivot, or something happens where we're surrendered and things feel overwhelming. And this is the same with returning to work after becoming a parent. You may find that the math doesn't add up in a sense of like being there at a job you don't like and you're not respected and not appreciated, doesn't feel aligned anymore. Like you could kind of deal with it and suck it up in the past, but now it's like I'm sacrificing time away from my most precious baby. It has to be worth it. It has to feel the work has to be so purposeful and exciting for it to be worth leaving your baby for. And it can sometimes that feeling can subside and you can find meaning in that workplace. Maybe you ask for some sort of lateral transition or promotion or demotion. Sometimes it means another workplace. Sometimes this means part-time or adding more hours or your own place of your own business
right.
ways where it can shift. But what motherhood does is that you can't escape your truth.
Mm,
It is a catalyst, it is a magnifying glass on everything you were trying to hide from yourself because you can no longer afford wasting time and wasting life because that means that you are sacrificing on the family front. And it's just the formula has to make sense.
yeah.
And what I see with a lot of parents during that first year, first couple of years, is there might be some shifts, or there might be some requests in the workplace of things that you've wanted for a while, but now you really need, like you need more money, and a lot of parents do this and should. I encourage this because um, it's expensive. We have to provide for our families. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's very natural also for this to be very unique to you. I don't, I never encourage anyone to quit or to stay or to do a certain thing. I do encourage them to take a breath with it and to let the waves come for a little while, and kind of wait it out. Because what I do also see is the first couple of weeks after returning to work are not like indicative of the whole experience. Like this is
They're
um,
thresholds. It's a
right,
threshold. Yeah.
right. And we
And
can't judge our
thresholds,
entire life by the thresholds
oh,
because
yeah.
we I don't know where we'd be.
I don't know where we'd be either because thresholds are often clunky.
Yes.
What would the clunky AF, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, in the way you're speaking about this, it's really the first time that I'm thinking about the similarity between returning to work and labor, that there is so much similarity in each of these threshold experiences of
Mm,
really bringing us to our knees, shedding past parts of ourselves, awakening new parts of ourselves,
mhm,
finding a different voice. Like these things, there's so many parallels that I'm seeing that I haven't really
mhm,
imagined or seen
mhm.
before. And I
Guttural
really
scream.
appreciate that. Yeah. And you've got to just keep breathing. You've got to keep breathing. And that sometimes we can't do it alone and we
Mhm.
have to reach out and ask for help
Right.
and get support from others, whether
Yeah.
it's our partner
Mhm.
or a family member or a professional like you skilled in this specific field.
Right. One
That
thing
that
I just want to
matters.
share in this parallel with birth is that I feel like we as mothers are doing a good job preparing ourselves for birth generally. You know, I remember reading a lot of books and doing a lot of courses and having a birth plan, but we don't really do that for our work life. Like we don't really have a return to work plan so much. We just assume that our employers are handling that and figuring that out. And I really want to challenge that because you cannot outsource your own education to your employer. First of all, because you cannot assume that they know what your rights will be. And if you show up on your first day with your pumping bag and you didn't give them notice of your time and space to pump, it can be very frustrating for everyone. So we need a good plan as to how we're going to approach maternity leave and also any eventualities of what might happen. This is what I'll do if I have postpartum depression. This is what I'll do if I have a continued birth injury. This is what I'll do if I have a C-section. And you can actually enlist your partner to help you with that because isn't that what they do? Like making fantasy drafts with like all potential outcomes. And like you can create a good spreadsheet, like put him in, or her in charge of creating this plan
Yeah.
of really being informed.
Spreadsheet is a verb in our house. So I have my husband's a financial planner. So it's like we use it as a verb. Are you going to spreadsheet that? Are you
Yeah. Give
gonna,
them
yeah.
the job. They give
Yeah.
them the job of holding the field of like all of the eventualities. So, because we're already doing so much and doing all of the emotional and mental labor related to our rights and the law and the requests and the advocacy, it can be a lot. So you can ask to share that. You can
Mhm.
even enlist a partner and say, if I experience postpartum depression, I want you to send this email to my boss, or I want you to help me and support me in sending this email because I might feel too hopeless and all the symptoms to be able to do it myself. Um, and so we have to actually prepare for returning to work and just the whole experience of workplace and parenting, just like we prepare for birth. Um,
And just like with birth, preparing for not the idealized version
right.
that we most hope for, but I'm hearing you speak about prepare for the unexpected,
Mhm.
prepare in the best way you can. And now it's impossible to prepare for everything that could ever possibly
Yeah, that's not
befall us
possible.
because that's just not
Probably
human.
terrifying too.
It would also be terrifying. That's not what we're saying, but what I'm hearing you say is do explore preparing for that which is different than your idealized version.
Yeah.
Because one of the things we can guarantee in a rite of passage, which is what we're talking about here, is the unpredictable.
Hmm.
That is
Truly.
inherent, not something to be excluded. It's something to expect that the unexpected will happen. We can't
Mhm.
necessarily know what it is.
Yeah, we have to ride the wave and surrender to it. And there's two types of women that come to my work. There is the one who is thinking about having children or another child or just got pregnant and just wants to really understand what the next year is going to look like for her so that she can plan ahead financially, logistically, professionally. She may decide to decline certain projects or take on more projects so she can make more money, but she's just really ahead of it. And she knows what to do if there's a loss. She knows what to do if there's a NICU stay. She knows what to do if she needs more time and how to ask for lactation rights or how her job is protected and in what ways retaliation can occur and how to respond to that. And then there is the archetype of the mom who will message me and say, I have to go back to work tomorrow, but I'm not ready. I can't do it. And that's a really tough place to be. And there's also the archetype of the father or the non-birthing partner texting his boss, my wife is in labor, I'll be out of the office for a few days. And that is also really tough because we have to do this together. And we actually have to ask for any sort of bonding or family leave in a very specific way. Otherwise, it is not legally protected. So what I really recommend for those of you who are in this journey of parenthood is to do this when you have the mental space for it and the emotional space to do the educating and the informing and the planning um, as soon as you can. Like we start adding things to our baby list, right? Like really early. And it's like that. And we're like reading all the reviews. We get so deep on like 2000 Amazon like reviews on the snoo. And I'm like, put that energy towards your rights and
Yeah.
towards your parental leave and your return to work because it's
Uh,
really going to pay off.
It's so going to pay off. And I love that you have a whole bunch of resources that can do that for folks. And before we start our wrapping up, we've been talking a lot about moms and primary caregivers returning to work and birthing parents. But in a lot of households, not all, but in a lot of households, there's more than one parent here.
Mm, yeah.
And yet there's so much focus on this one person in the household
Yes.
and their responsibilities and their needs and all of that. And I want to say, well, hang on a second. What about this other parent? Are there some things like I think I read somewhere, and I'm gonna botch the statistic, but about like parents in the Netherlands, it's seen as not good if a father doesn't take his paternity leave.
Mhm,
He's societally looked down on.
mhm.
And I was like, ooh, oh, wait a minute. But I don't know that that's where we're at over here.
Yeah.
So, can
No.
you talk to me about family leave kind of more
Mm.
broadly and expanding it to more people in the family household?
Yes. I'm going to say something that is really going to surprise you. Some states in the US lead the world on paternity leave. States like California, Massachusetts, Washington, New Jersey have paid bonding leaves that fathers can access or non-birthing parents to take time off that far surpasses most European countries. In Europe, even though they're taking it, it's usually 2 to 3 weeks.
Mm,
But in some of our states, it's up to 12 weeks. So our paternity leaves are actually longer, other than Sweden, which is a total outlier. But we tend to think of European countries as having these like incredible systems. But we actually have some amazing systems in our own country, but it's very state specific. So that's a one thing I really encourage parents to look into, which I also have in my resources, but that you have to look at your state. And we tend to assume that we have no rights or no paid leave, but that is true for not everyone. It is true, it's going to be true for some of you, but
mhm.
depending on where you live, you are actually going to have access to a benefits program. So the
Well,
number,
that's hope
yeah,
inducing. I like hearing that. Thank you for blowing
yeah,
my mind.
yeah,
Yes.
right. Yeah, because we're really focused on like we have no paid leave. And of course, it's an issue, but it's an incomplete statement.
Mm,
The complete statement is something like 60% of Americans doesn't have paid leave. Very
Uh,
different, right? It's like 120
yeah,
million
although 60 is a
parents.
pretty high number.
It is too high. It
It's
is
too
too
high.
high.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but with non-birthing parents and bonding leave, it's so essential that we don't just ask our employers for time off or PTO, but that we actually ask for the statute under which we can take paternity leave. And dads tend to be really scary, and of course, but it's a little bit like, well, moms don't have the option; they just have to do it. And dads also have rights, and the more that they can actually take time off, the less pressure there will be on the mother because she will be able to kind of have a more easeful way to return to work. And what I recommend for parents is that they stack their leave. They take a little bit of leave in the beginning together to bond, but then one of the parents goes back to work and then you alternate. And when you do that, you can actually stay with the baby for many months and also delaying daycare costs or nanny costs. So you can kind of stack your leaves when you work with the intermittent leave option so that or you can also use it where both parents work part-time so that you're kind of alternating and then you're still connected to the workplace. So there's so many ways to work with these leave laws, and it blows people's minds because they're inundated with assumptions that they don't have rights or options. But it's just a matter about understanding your local laws and also asking for them in a very kind of specific way. Otherwise, it doesn't work. Um, but yeah, fathers have bonding and family leave rights, usually about 12 weeks. And yeah, it's globally long compared
And
to
yeah, okay, that's
countries. Yeah, and then we want to also encourage dads to take it. It's like providing doesn't just mean providing financially. It also means providing the emotional container. And really, I'm an advocate for all parental leave being equal because otherwise it's always going to be the moms that are hired less and fired more because they're going to be out of work more. And I feel like that's the only way to actually address the gender gap in the workplace. But we're not really there.
mhm.
But what it can actually
But you want
happen,
to advocate for that. Yeah.
yeah, and it can sometimes happen where the dad has more time off rights than the mom. Like it is really across the board.
Yeah, okay.
It's really
And
wild.
I like how you are speaking about how it's important for both parents to take that leave
Yes.
because then it helps create sort of the snowball energy
Yeah.
of support for this happening.
I
And
just did this private podcast episode in my membership where I talked about how to advocate with your partner to take paternity leave because there's a ton of data that paternity leave results in kids having higher scores in school. Like that is how the foundation is built. And this is some really good data to throw the dude because they love the data, or that it results in less infant mortality
Mhm.
or in lower risk of postpartum depression, anxiety. Like there's a ton of data on how this supports everyone in the family ecosystem for the entirety of their
Right,
lives.
right. It creates support for the whole unit
Hmm.
in ways that really matter. I mean, I don't have the data like you do, but I have the lived experience of
Yeah.
watching clients, and it I can see it. I can
Hmm.
see the difference
Yeah.
in what happens. And I want to also just make sure that we speak to those parents, though, at the same time. Like I have known some parents and been related to some of them who find staying home with the baby really, really tough.
It's
And
so.
that, yeah, and that going back to work is actually the relief that they
Hmm.
need.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't want us to be speaking like it's a one size fits all experience because as you said, there's so many different ways
Yeah.
that this goes. And
Yeah.
I've known parents who have set aside a certain amount of time and decided actually they needed to go back for their mental health.
I've seen that too.
Yeah. And
Where
that can surprise folks.
it can surprise folks for sure because they assume they'll want to take as much time as possible. And then they find that they really like to have some separation. They like to have some differentiation, individuation from their home life. It can
Yeah.
feel very kind of pandemic-y, you know, when you are
Mhm.
home with a baby and it is a constant, monotonous routine of changing diapers, feeding, and naps and crying. And when you're used to a lot of stimulation, mental stimulation, or things happening, or very active life, that monotony can feel so suffocating.
Yeah.
And
If we're super well versed in the Apollonian and suddenly we're in Artemis
that
Forest, we're
can feel
like,
violent too.
what? Yeah. It can feel really tough.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes, because it's abrupt. It's very
Mhm.
abrupt unless we've like spent time with a lot of babies with which most of us haven't.
Right.
Um, we kind of fall into it and realize, wow, I thought this would be a lot easier. I thought we
Yeah.
just have be watching TV and movies, and it's not that.
Yeah, or having cute baby snuggles and counting baby toes. And sometimes
Mm,
it's so, so much more than that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And there's
Yeah.
this also like labor of motherhood and caretaking that is so invisible and so not, you know, like structured in the same way. You don't get a bonus, you don't get a raise. And so the workplace can feel gratifying in that way of like there's a system here. And it can systems can feel like safety to the brain, like it does to me too. So when you're suddenly like fully in the wilds, it can be really disorienting.
Yeah, really
And
disorienting. And it's also, there's even a system for reinforcement and validation in many workplace. I know that for me, even, I work for myself and I can have a blue, hard, icky day in my life. And as soon as I'm sitting across Zoom or talking with you or, working with a client, I'm like, oh, this is a relief, right? Because you're
Mhm.
getting to use a different part of your psyche and identity and connection. And that really can deeply feed us, as well as getting the reinforcement back of, wow, you've been so helpful. Our babies rarely go, wow, you're awesome. No, they just let
Uh-huh.
us know when we're not doing it in a way that works for them.
Yeah. You don't, and it's unpredictable. And truly for me, it was the sleep deprivation. Like it wasn't, I enjoyed being at work and doing my job and having adult conversations and a warm cup of coffee. But it was a double shift of being up at night and then having to use my brain during the day. Like that's what really, was the initiation for me of like, how do I do this? And driving um so when you're in this place of like, I love my job. I love my job so much. I don't want to risk it, but still I feel physically so stretched like that. It's okay to also ask for support in the workplace. And usually that's going to be in the form of a different start time, for example. That's what I did when I returned to work and I went straight into a trial. It was really overwhelming. And then we won the trial, but I was so, at the end of that, so dissociated and numb.
Mm,
And usually when you win a trial in our industry, you can ask for a raise or a bonus. And that year, that time, I asked for flexibility. I said, I
mm,
just want to be able to set my own schedule. And that did so much. Like it was
mm.
worth so much more than a raise because I was able to wait out traffic or work from home some days or work during naps and work in the evening. And it's that freedom that allows us to really thrive and to come through that transformation at the other side.
I love that. Being creative, it sounds like you are someone who got creative and thought about not what are the cookie cutters that are available to me, but what is it that I need and how do I ask for what it is that I need? Reversing the order of who it is you're trying to please, the employer or yourself. And
Yeah,
I'm hearing you say, I looked at myself and said, what do I need? And then asked for that.
right.
I love that.
And one final thing I'll share about that place of employment where I was, this law firm, is that I don't work there and haven't worked there in a long time. So I also regret making sacrifices on the family front. Like I there was like a situation where I had to return to work sooner than I thought, or I skipped some pump breaks, or I didn't see my kid for, on a sick day, and because I felt like I had to work. And I look back now and I'm just, my kids are older and I'll never get that time back when they're little. But on the work front, it's like all a blur. I don't even really remember what I was working on that felt so important. And it may feel really important in the moment, but rarely it is that important. Like usually it's things that can wait or be pushed aside. And so this is a really special and sacred time of your life. And I remember when my babies turned into toddlers and I didn't really want to be around them so much. And I'm like, oh, the baby phase is already over. And I was like, really, I just got into it. Like I really was enjoying it.
Uh-oh.
So it can shift. And so if you're in that place where your baby's the baby, this is really the time to advocate for yourself and to really stand firm in your sacred right of I just created life. I am a goddamn life creator. And um, everything in the workplace is just not as important as that, and it can wait.
Yeah.
The employer's operational needs are never going to be more important than your baby's needs.
I feel like you and I could keep talking because you just circled back to my third note from your very first thing you started talking about at the very beginning of the podcast, which was guilt, both
Mm,
both parental guilt and
mhm.
professional guilt. I'm like,
Professional
oh, I
growth.
totally want to unpack that as well, but we're out of time. And so I'm like,
Yeah.
"Ah, okay, we'll have to do this again." So Daphne, where can folks find out about you, learn more about your work, and connect with these amazing services that you have?
Mhm. So I have my Instagram, the Mom Attorney, where you can find me. Just fair warning, I do workplace education, but I also do a lot of ranting about fascism. So just be prepared for that.
They're
I
connected.
yes.
These issues are
Yes,
connected.
yes,
Yes.
absolutely. Um, and my I have services on a website called the Liberated Mother Society. That's what hosts all of my. I have a membership program. I also have a program for entrepreneurs who want to build their own businesses and want to learn all of the legalities, corporate setup, tax hacks, systems, everything related to hiring or contractors. All these things that feel scary. But we'll just make it fun. And yeah, that's where you can find me. I
Okay.
have a law firm as well, but all of the links you'll find also on my Instagram bio because there's a few different services and branches to my business.
And we'll put them in the show notes as well so folks can easily find them wherever they're listening.
Mm.
So, as we begin to bring our conversation to a close, I like to end with one question. So, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. So, what's one thing that you feel passionately about that you want new or expectant parents to see, hear, feel, or know during this profound period of their lives, during this rite of passage?
I'm gonna bring it back to the vision. It's funny because I said that I don't dwell too much in the visionary space because I'm looking at what's here. And though I do, and I have deep trust that matriarchy is what's coming next. And that we're gonna be the leaders of this new world and this new paradigm and this new model of um of living that is a lot more connected to our nature, that is a lot more Artemisian in a way. And I just have such deep trust in that as a student of history, as a student of matriarchy and like old pagan communities, and that these things are going to come back. Like we used to center the mother in all aspects of life because the womb is also at the center of our bodies. And we're going back to that, but it's awkward, it takes time, and it's going to take all of us, but just a deep trust also that we're working on it. That we've got you, that you're not in this alone. There's a lot of us advocates who are taking this issue very seriously, that are moving this forward, that are creating the momentum. And it feels slow and painful because it is like birth sometimes, but we're also collectively in a transformation and an initiation. And I just have deep trust that at the other side of this, there is going to be matriarchy and it's going to center the mother, and we're going to feel a lot more celebrated and supported. So the more that we can live that now, the easier it will be to implement collectively.
Mhm. Thank you so much. It's wonderful getting to talk with you
Mhm.
today and just to be in space, share space with you and feel your wisdom and connect all these dots that hadn't been previously connected. It's really
Mm.
been a joy. Thank
I
you so
enjoyed it so much. I could do this all day.
much. Me too. So, and thank you, listeners, for sharing this time with us. If something shared today impacted, supported, or moved you, please share this episode with a friend. I produce this podcast myself, and your support makes it possible. To show a little love for the podcast and these conversations, please follow, rate, and review. If you'd like to continue the conversation, please join us on Instagram at Transformed by Birth. I look forward to being with you again on the next episode of Transformed by Birth. Now, let's gather what we want to take away from this conversation. If there's nuggets or juicy bits that feel important to you, take them in with an inhale, and then we'll blow out our candle with the exhale. Until next time, bye, friends.